Something very interesting is happening inside the royal family right now. And this time, the story is not simply about another argument between Prince Harry and Prince William. It is not just about Meghan Markle. And it is not even just about King Charles. The bigger story is what happened after Harry finally got the family reunion he had been trying to reach for so long. Because, according to a report published today, Meghan Markle has reportedly given Prince Harry a new major task, and the timing could hardly be more significant. This comes after the Sussexes' private reunion with King Charles at Highgrove, and that is where this story becomes much more complicated, because Harry now appears to be caught between two completely different worlds. On one side, there is the family he left behind. On the other, there is the life he built with Meghan in California. And somewhere in the middle is a relationship with his father that suddenly appears to have a door open again. But that door may not stay open forever. The first thing we need to understand is why this reunion mattered so much. On July 10, 2026, King Charles hosted Prince Harry, Meghan Markle, Archie, and Lilibet at Highgrove House. Buckingham Palace described it as a private family occasion. It was significant because it brought Charles together with Harry's children after years of distance. For Harry, this was not just another royal appearance. There were no cameras surrounding the family. There was no giant public ceremony. There was no dramatic announcement. Instead, the most important part of the meeting was precisely what was missing: publicity. And that appears to have been deliberate. Reports said the king wanted the meeting kept private, while Harry reportedly assured his father that he would not publicly discuss the family gathering. Think about that for a moment. For years, Harry and Meghan have been associated with highly public discussions about their experiences inside the royal family. But this time, Harry had a completely different objective: protect the meeting, protect the relationship, and perhaps most importantly, do not say anything that could destroy the fragile trust that had just begun to return. That is why today's report about Meghan's alleged major task is so interesting. Because if Harry is now trying to rebuild trust with his father, then whatever happens next could determine whether this reconciliation moves forward or quietly disappears. According to the report published today, Meghan has reportedly assigned Harry a new major task following the reunion with Charles. Now, we have to be very clear here. This is a reported claim, not an official statement from Meghan, Harry, or Buckingham Palace. There is no public royal announcement confirming that Meghan literally gave Harry a specific instruction. But the report is gaining attention because it fits into a much bigger question. What exactly does Harry want from this renewed relationship with his family? Is this simply about repairing a father-son relationship? Is Harry trying to make sure Archie and Lilibet can have a relationship with their grandfather? Or is there a much bigger future plan behind the scenes? Harry himself has previously made clear that reconciliation with his family matters to him. Recent reporting has described him as determined to repair those relationships and careful not to jeopardize the progress that has been made. And that gives us the first major clue. Harry cannot afford another public explosion. He cannot afford another breakdown in communication. And he certainly cannot afford for the relationship with Charles to return to where it was before. Because this time, there is something different. There has already been contact. There has already been a private meeting. And there has already been a moment when Charles chose to open the door. But here comes the problem. That door may only remain open if Harry can prove that the new relationship can be handled differently. And that is exactly where Meghan's alleged new task becomes fascinating. What if the task is not simply about getting Harry back into the royal family? What if it is about controlling what happens next? What if Meghan understands that the reunion itself is only the beginning? Because getting Harry into the room with his father is one thing. Keeping that relationship alive is something completely different. And then there is William. The one person who could make everything much harder. Reports today claim that Prince William is still not ready to end his feud with Harry. That means Harry may have succeeded in reopening one royal door, while another remains firmly shut. And this is where the story takes a dramatic turn. Because Charles is Harry's father, William is Harry's brother, and Harry cannot completely rebuild his place within the family while pretending that the William problem does not exist. So what happens if Harry gets closer to Charles? What happens if Charles begins trusting him again? What happens if Meghan starts seeing a genuine opportunity for a more stable relationship with the royal family? And what happens if William refuses to participate? Suddenly, this is no longer just a reconciliation story. It becomes a question of whether the royal family can rebuild one relationship without reopening every old wound. And Harry's next move could determine everything. Because the reported task Meghan has allegedly given him may be less about what Harry wants right now, and more about what he needs to accomplish next. And that brings us to the second part of this story. because there is another development happening at exactly the wrong time. King Charles may be getting cautious again, and if that report is accurate, Harry's window of opportunity may be much smaller than anyone realizes. Here is where the story becomes even more intriguing. Just when it appeared that Harry and Charles had finally taken a meaningful step toward reconciliation, another report surfaced today claiming that the king may be backing off from further cementing his relationship with Harry and Meghan. Again, this is based on claims from royal insiders, not an official palace announcement. But the timing is impossible to ignore. First, there is a private family reunion. Then, reports say Harry is determined to keep the reconciliation alive. Then comes a report that Meghan has allegedly given Harry a major task. And now another report suggests Charles may be becoming more cautious. That sequence raises a very important question. Did something change after the reunion? Or is the king simply moving carefully because he knows how fragile this relationship remains? Remember, Charles did not invite Harry and Meghan back into a public royal event. He did not announce a new role for them. He did not make a dramatic statement about the family being reunited. Instead, the meeting remained private. That distinction matters, because reconciliation and restoration are two completely different things. A father can forgive his son without restoring him to royal life. A grandfather can want to see his grandchildren without wanting to return to the old family structure. And a king can welcome his son privately while remaining extremely cautious about what happens publicly. That may be the reality Harry is facing, and it explains why discretion appears to be so important. The July meeting at Highgrove was described by Buckingham Palace as private. Harry's relationship with Charles may be improving, but the royal family has every reason to move carefully. After everything that has happened over the years, trust cannot simply be switched back on. It has to be rebuilt, one conversation at a time, one visit at a time, one promise at a time. And one of the biggest questions is whether Harry can maintain that balance, because Harry has something he did not have before. Momentum. He has finally seen his father again in a private setting. He has brought Meghan and the children into that moment, and he has reportedly made reconciliation a serious priority. But momentum can disappear very quickly, especially when another member of the family remains deeply opposed to reconciliation. That member is William. Reports today claim William is still not ready to repair his relationship with Harry, and this is where the family situation becomes almost impossible to navigate. Imagine being Harry. Your father has finally opened the door. Your brother has not. Your wife reportedly wants you to accomplish something important. And the entire world is watching to see whether the family will reconcile. One wrong move could become tomorrow's headline. One leaked conversation could destroy months of progress. One public comment could make Charles question whether private trust is possible. That is why Harry's behavior after the Highgrove reunion may actually be more important than the reunion itself. What does he say? What does he not say? Where does he go next? Does he continue pushing for more family contact? Does he focus on Charles? Does he try to approach William? Or does he wait? The answer could tell us exactly how serious this reconciliation effort really is. There is also another important piece to this puzzle. Harry reportedly believes future opportunities could help strengthen his relationship with his father. One report today says Harry sees next year's Invictus Games in Birmingham as potentially important to repairing his relationship with Charles. That would make sense from Harry's perspective. Invictus is one of the projects most closely associated with him. It gives him a legitimate reason to return to Britain. It gives members of the royal family an opportunity to interact with him without immediately turning the moment into a formal reconciliation ceremony. And it could create opportunities for family contact that feel natural rather than forced. But there is still a huge problem. William. Because even if Charles and Harry continue rebuilding their relationship, William's position remains uncertain. And that means Harry cannot simply declare victory. He cannot say the family feud is over, because it isn't. The family has not returned to the old days. There is no evidence that everyone is suddenly sitting around the same table again. There is no confirmed full family reconciliation. There is only a small opening, and that opening needs to be protected. This may be exactly why the reported task from Meghan matters so much. Perhaps the task is not one dramatic action. Perhaps it is a long-term strategy. Stay calm, stay private. Do not jeopardize the relationship with Charles. Build trust. And slowly create opportunities for Harry and the children to remain connected to Britain. Again, the interpretation is analysis of the current reporting, not a confirmed statement from Meghan. But it explains why the timing has generated so much attention. Because if Charles is becoming cautious again, then Harry cannot afford to treat this reunion like a victory lap. He has to treat it like the beginning of a negotiation. And that is a very different story. The most interesting part may be that Meghan herself may have a different perspective from Harry. Harry has spent years talking about family. He has spoken about wanting reconciliation. He has talked about his father. He has talked about his brother. He has talked about security. And he has repeatedly returned to the question of his place in Britain. Meghan, meanwhile, has built a separate life in California. The couple's professional lives, public image, and family priorities are now deeply connected. So if Meghan really has given Harry a major task, what exactly is she asking him to accomplish? Is it about Charles? Is it about Britain? Is it about their children? Is it about security? Is it about rebuilding public trust? Or is it something much bigger? That question leads directly into the third part. Because one of the most revealing possibilities is that this may not actually be about returning to royal life at all. It may be about creating a new relationship with the royal family without returning to the old rules. And if that is the strategy, William may be the biggest obstacle of all. Let's step back for a moment, because the easiest way to understand this entire situation is to separate reconciliation from royal restoration. They are not the same thing. Harry could repair his relationship with his father without becoming a working royal again. Meghan could develop a more comfortable relationship with Charles without returning to palace life. Archie and Lilibet could spend more time with their grandfather without the Sussexes reversing their decision to step away from senior royal duties. And that may actually be the most realistic path forward. A family relationship without a return to the old institution. But there is another question. Would William accept that? According to today's reporting, William is still not ready to end his feud with Harry, and that creates an extraordinary situation. Charles can reconcile with Harry, but William does not have to. Harry can repair his relationship with his father, but his relationship with his brother can remain broken, and Meghan can encourage Harry to move forward, but she cannot force William to participate. This is why the reported task becomes so interesting. If Meghan is really pushing Harry to accomplish something right now, then Harry's challenge is not simply getting another meeting with Charles. The bigger challenge is proving that the relationship can survive. Because the royal family has already learned what happens when private disagreements become public battles. The damage can last for years. And Harry's greatest asset right now may actually be silence. That sounds strange considering how much public discussion has surrounded the Sussexes. But this situation is different. The Highgrove meeting was private. Harry reportedly promised not to discuss it publicly. And reports now say he is determined not to do anything that could jeopardize reconciliation. That suggests Harry may finally understand something crucial. The next chapter cannot be built the same way as the previous one. If he wants trust, he has to demonstrate trustworthiness. If he wants privacy, he has to protect privacy. If he wants access to his family, he has to avoid turning every family interaction into a public event. And if Meghan's alleged task is connected to this, then perhaps the assignment is less about confrontation and more about discipline. That would be a dramatic change from the narrative many people have become accustomed to. Instead of Harry fighting the palace, Harry would be trying to avoid another fight. Instead of demanding immediate answers, he would be waiting. Instead of trying to force a reconciliation, he would allow Charles to decide the pace. And that matters because another report today claims Charles may be backing off somewhat from further strengthening ties with Harry and Meghan. If that is true, the king's message may be very simple. Slow down. Do not push too hard. Let the relationship develop naturally. And that could be the most difficult instruction for Harry of all, because Harry has reportedly wanted reconciliation for a long time. He has spoken openly about his desire to repair family relationships. He has also remained connected to Britain through causes such as Invictus. So after finally getting the meeting with Charles, he may understandably want more visits, more time, more opportunities for the children to see their grandfather. Maybe eventually another meeting with other members of the family, but wanting something and being ready for it are two different things. And William's refusal to reconcile could force Harry to choose a very different strategy. Instead of trying to bring the whole family together at once, he may need to focus on one relationship at a time. First Charles, then perhaps the children, then perhaps other relatives, and only much later, if circumstances change, William. This is where the story becomes emotional, because Harry is not simply trying to fix a political relationship. He is trying to repair a family. And family relationships are rarely logical. They are built on memories, disappointment, loyalty, betrayal, forgiveness, and time. For Harry, the stakes are especially personal because his own children are now old enough for family connections to become meaningful. The Highgrove meeting reportedly included Archie and Lilibet, giving Charles an opportunity to see his grandchildren after years apart. That changes the emotional equation. Harry is no longer only asking, what happens between me and my father? He may also be asking, what kind of relationship will my children have with their grandfather? That is a much bigger question, and it may explain why reconciliation appears to matter so much to him. But now imagine the pressure on Meghan. If the reported task is real, she would understand that Harry's next move could have consequences for the entire family. If Harry makes a mistake, Meghan feels the impact. If Charles pulls away, Meghan feels the impact. If William refuses reconciliation, Meghan remains part of the story. And if Harry becomes more closely connected to Britain again, their family life in California could also be affected. That is why this story is not simply Meghan orders Harry to do something. That headline is dramatic. But the deeper story is about a couple trying to navigate two worlds, California and Britain, private life and royal expectations, family reconciliation and public scrutiny, and children who are now part of a complicated family history they did not create. There is another fascinating possibility. Perhaps Harry's ultimate goal is not to return to royal duties. Perhaps he simply wants a bridge, a relationship with Charles, a relationship between his children and their grandfather, a way to participate in British life without becoming a working royal. And perhaps Meghan's alleged task is connected to building that bridge. If so, the biggest obstacle may not be Charles at all. It may be trust. Because once trust is broken, every action gets interpreted through the history that came before it. A private meeting can look like reconciliation. A public silence can look like strategy. A family visit can look like a comeback. And a simple conversation can become international news. That is the environment Harry and Meghan are operating in. Which brings us to the final question. What happens next? Does Charles continue opening the door? Does he slow things down? Does William eventually soften? Does Harry return to Britain more frequently? And most importantly, can Meghan's alleged new task actually succeed? Because if it does, we could be watching the beginning of an entirely new chapter. Not a return to the old royal family. Something else. Something quieter. Something much more complicated and possibly much more powerful. So here we are. After years of conflict, public accusations, distance, and disappointment, something has finally changed. Harry sat down with his father. Meghan was there. Archie was there. Lilibet was there. And the meeting was private. That alone would have been almost unimaginable a short time ago. Buckingham Palace confirmed the Highgrove gathering as a private family occasion. But now the real story begins. Because reconciliation is not one meeting. It is what happens after the meeting. And right now, the signals are mixed. On one side, Harry appears determined to repair his family relationships. Reports describe him as determined to protect the progress that has been made. On the other side, reports claim Charles may be becoming cautious about further strengthening ties with Harry and Meghan. And then there is William. Reports say he remains unwilling to end his feud with Harry. So Harry has three very different realities to navigate. A father who has opened the door. A brother who has not. And a wife who, according to today's report, has allegedly given him a major task. This is why the next few months could be extremely important. Harry cannot force William, he cannot force Charles, and he cannot force the palace to move faster than it wants. The only thing Harry can control is his own behavior, and that may be the key to everything. If he stays quiet about private conversations, if he avoids turning family meetings into public controversies, if he continues focusing on reconciliation rather than confrontation, then Charles may have a reason to keep the door open. But if the situation becomes public again, if private discussions become headlines, if accusations return, then fragile progress could disappear almost overnight. And that is why the alleged task from Meghan is so fascinating. Maybe the real assignment is not something dramatic. Maybe it is simply, do not ruin this. Because after years of damage, that could be the hardest job of all. There is another possibility. Harry may be trying to establish a completely new role for himself. Not a working royal, not an outsider attacking the institution, but a family member who can maintain a private relationship with the king while continuing his independent life. That would allow him to remain connected to Britain without completely reversing Megxit. And there are already signs that Britain remains important to Harry. His work with Invictus continues to give him a connection to the country. And reports have suggested that he sees future Invictus events as opportunities to strengthen family relationships. That could become a bridge. But bridges only work if both sides are willing to cross them. And right now, William does not appear ready. That is the uncomfortable truth. Even if Charles and Harry rebuild their relationship, it does not automatically repair Harry and William. The brothers have years of tension behind them, and reports have emphasized that William's feelings remain deeply strained. So what could Harry realistically do? He could wait. He could focus on his father. He could give William space. He could avoid public pressure. And he could allow time to do something that no headline can accomplish: change emotions. That may sound boring compared with the dramatic royal headlines we see every day, but it may actually be the only strategy that works. Because the biggest mistake Harry could make now would be to treat reconciliation like a public relations campaign. It is not. It is personal. And if Charles truly wants a relationship with his son and grandchildren, then the relationship needs room to grow away from cameras. That is why the private nature of the Highgrove meeting may be one of the most important details in the entire story. The silence was the story. No grand announcement. No dramatic statement. No public celebration. Just family. And perhaps that is exactly what Charles wanted, a relationship without an audience. If Harry can maintain that, then the future could look very different. Imagine a situation where Archie and Lilibet gradually spend more time with their grandfather. Imagine Harry visiting Britain without every trip becoming a confrontation. Imagine Charles and Harry speaking regularly but privately. Imagine Meghan finding a way to support that relationship without becoming the center of every royal controversy. That would not mean everything is forgiven. It would not mean Harry and William are suddenly best friends. It would not mean the Sussexes are returning as working royals. But it would represent something arguably more important, a family beginning to function like a family again. And that may be what Harry actually wants. Of course, there is another side to this. Some royal commentators have suggested that Harry's renewed relationship with Charles could also have practical benefits for Meghan and the Sussexes. One commentator today went as far as claiming that Harry could be using the reunion as a pathway toward greater influence and opportunity for Meghan. That is an opinion from a royal commentator, not established fact. And that is exactly why this story is going to remain controversial. People will interpret the same events in completely different ways. Some will see a son trying to reconnect with his father. Others will see a strategic attempt to rebuild royal connections. Some will believe Meghan is encouraging Harry to repair his family relationships. Others will question what the Sussexes ultimately want from the royal family. The truth may be much less dramatic. It may simply be a family trying to figure out what comes next. But there is one thing we can say with confidence. The Highgrove reunion changed the situation. Before it happened, Harry's relationship with Charles was mostly discussed in terms of distance and conflict. After it happened, reconciliation became a real possibility. And now the question is whether that possibility can survive. That is the real cliffhanger. Because Charles may have opened the door, Harry may be determined to walk through it. Meghan may reportedly be pushing him toward a specific goal, but William remains on the other side of the family divide. And until that changes, the royal family is still split. So the next major development could be incredibly revealing. Will Charles invite Harry back for another private meeting? Will Harry make another trip to Britain? Will Archie and Lilibet see their grandfather again? Will Meghan become more directly involved in future family events? Or will Charles decide that enough progress has been made for now and quietly step back? And then there is the question everyone will be watching. Will William ever change his mind? Because if William remains opposed, Harry could find himself in an unusual position, closer to his father, but still separated from his brother. And that may be the new reality of the royal family. Not one dramatic reconciliation, not one dramatic breakup, but a slow, complicated rebuilding process. One relationship at a time, one visit at a time, one promise at a time. And perhaps that is why Meghan's alleged major task matters so much. Because the biggest task may not be convincing Charles. It may not even be convincing William. It may be convincing everyone involved that this time can be different, that private conversations can stay private, that family moments do not have to become headlines, that reconciliation does not have to mean surrender, and that rebuilding a relationship does not require pretending the past never happened. For Harry, this may be his most important test yet. He has already spent years explaining why he left. Now the challenge may be showing what he is willing to do to reconnect. And for Meghan, if today's report is accurate, the challenge may be helping Harry navigate that process without allowing the fragile relationship to collapse. But remember, none of the reported details about Meghan's alleged instructions should be treated as an official royal confirmation. The palace has not announced a Meghan task. The couple has not publicly confirmed the alleged assignment. What we do know is that Harry and Meghan did meet King Charles privately at Highgrove, that the meeting was confirmed by Buckingham Palace, and that current reporting continues to describe reconciliation as a work in progress rather than a finished deal. And perhaps that uncertainty is exactly what makes this story so compelling, because the next chapter has not been written yet. The door is open, but nobody knows how wide it will open. Harry is moving carefully, Charles appears cautious, William remains distant, and Meghan's reported new task has suddenly put the spotlight back on the Sussexes. So now the question is no longer, will Harry ever reconnect with his family? He already has. The question is, can he keep the connection alive? Because that may be the real royal test. And if Harry succeeds, we could be watching the beginning of a completely different relationship between the Sussexes and the royal family. But if one wrong move destroys the trust that has just started to return, the door could close again. And this time, it may be much harder to open. That is why the next Harry and Charles meeting could be far more important than the first. And why everyone will be watching what Harry does next, because Meghan's alleged task may have only just begun. And the biggest question is whether Harry can actually complete it.